Nickelodeon All Star Brawl.
Alright, I'm really doing this. I can't believe it's out already, but today I'm going to be taking a look at a more recent licensed game in the form of Nickelodeon All Star Brawl, released for PlayStation 4 and 5, Xbox One and Series X and S, Nintendo Switch, and PC. Geez, that's a lot of different platforms. Originally announced back in June of 2021, and as soon as the first teaser trailer was shown, I was immediately curious about the game. A Super Smash Bros. Game featuring cartoon characters? Where have I heard that before? And so, immediately, I was cautiously optimistic. Despite the core mechanics of CN Punch Time Explosion XL being rather shaky all things considered, the actual content within the game itself is something I can compliment greatly. While I've never done a full-on review of Punch Time Explosion XL, it is a game that has been on my radar for quite a while and is one that I intend to cover at some point on this channel. I have owned that game since 2013 and have played it every so often over the years. I will say that the aspect I admire most about Punch Time Explosion XL is the vast array of characters and especially the story mode that was present in that game. I wouldn't say the combat actually holds up nowadays or even back when it came out, but there is something incredible about getting to play as the Powerpuff Girls in a platform fighting game, amongst the sheer array of other Cartoon Network characters. And so, for a title to get a similar treatment in the form of Nickelodeon characters, it seemed like it was an inevitability, especially with the recent success of the Nickelodeon kart racer video games, which are an obvious take on one of Nintendo's other best-selling franchises, Mario Kart. At least I assume the Nicktoons game was successful. I mean, it must have sold well enough to warrant a second game, so that's gotta mean something, right?
With even more of your favorite characters than ever before. Hey there, JoJo.
But yes, with the latest addition to the Nicktoons video game franchise, being a platform fighting game, I was already all in on this idea, and so I ordered the game ahead of time in anticipation that I would end up making a video about it. And then the game had a slightly troubled launch with physical copies being delayed, which caused me to receive the game like 10 days after I was supposed to, and ultimately ended up making this review late as a result. So hey, I couldn't get this video out in a timely manner, but at least I'm getting it out at all. So, with that said, let's get into the plot of this game. Is what I would say if this game had any form of story mode whatsoever. I think the number one most disappointing thing about All Star Brawl, in my opinion, is that this game has a very minimal amount of modes. In fact, I'd say it's just meeting the bare minimum criteria. You've got the standard battle mode, an arcade mode, and an online mode, which is just battle mode but against people online instead of locally. It's a little disappointing if I'm being honest, especially considering that Punch Time Explosion came with a full-on story mode that, while relatively short, was still a fun 90-minute romp through the various worlds of Cartoon Network franchises. Nick All Star Brawl is sorely lacking when it comes to optional side modes. Not that these are an absolute necessity when it comes to platform fighting games, the core fighting mechanics should always come first, and I'll be getting to that momentarily, but as far as other modes go, arcade is the only option. I think this would have been fine if arcade mode had the same level of detail and shakeups that Smash Bros. Does, where characters can be different sizes, have multiple variations, combos of different fighters together, metal variants, etc, but no, this mode just consists of 7 straight 1v1 battles against AI opponents on regular stages. It's a bit lacking in diversity, and playing the same mode over and over again to get the trophy for beating arcade mode with all fighters gets very tiresome when it comes down to it. Oh, I'm playing the PS5 version in this video, by the way, seeing as the PS5 is now my favorite console of all time, and I'm not just saying that because I've had this thing for nearly a year now, and I've easily been enjoying this thing way more than any other PlayStation or Nintendo console for that matter. And Nickelodeon All Star Brawl runs like a dream on this thing. The game looks incredible graphically speaking, with the lighting and shading of the character models looking very solid from the bit I've played. I've hardly noticed any graphical hiccups, and other than a few characters like maybe the Avatar cast and Danny Phantom, most of the models look like very accurate 3D representations of the shows that each character is from. The SpongeBob cast, Nigel Thornberry, Helga, Zim, Reptar, and I was especially impressed with the way Lincoln and Lucy Loud translated into 3D. I haven't played the Nickelodeon kart racer game, so I don't know if any assets were borrowed from those titles in the making of this game, but I'll say for the most part these characters look really good and is one of the highest compliments that I can give this. I just hope the Avatar characters get a little improvement in their faces, especially Aang, because it just looks a bit off. although his taunt is incredible and I'm so glad that that made it into the game. Nickelodeon All Star Brawl was developed by Ludosity, by the way, I hope I pronounced that right, and it is readily apparent that these guys are very ingrained in meme culture if some of these character taunts are anything to go by. I normally talk down on memes in pop culture, but honestly, given that these are being used not only as references to memes, but as actual taunts to tease other players mid-battle, I'd say it's a purposeful use that justifies itself. Plus, most of these taunts came from things that the characters actually did within the cartoon itself, so it's not like it's pulling from some other outside source. Despite having Brawl in its name, Super Smash Bros. Melee and Ultimate seem to be the most influential Smash games on this title because the characters move fast and snappy, control well, there's no tripping, there is an all-directional air dodge that characters can use, and of course, wave dashing. Obviously, this game is nowhere near the same level of finesse that the actual Smash Ultimate is, so to expect that level of detail in its mechanics would be rather unreasonable. Things like stale moves and percentages are absent from the game, but it still functions perfectly well for what it is. Heck, in comparing to how Punch Time Explosion handles its fighting mechanics, I'd say this game blows that one out of the water. When it comes down to the core fighting gameplay, this has it beat by a landslide, although I will admit it took a bit of time to adjust to the 3 attack buttons considering my muscle memory from the usual 2.
3, 2, 1, go! Complete!
Nicktoons characters come with 3 different types of attacks: weak, strong, and special, each of which can be used to perform forward, upward, and downward directional variations both on the ground and in the air, which introduces a unique concept of what could be the equivalent of air tilt and air smash attacks that Super Smash Bros. Doesn't have a distinction between. I know that the Smash and Punch Time Explosion comparisons have been abundant in this video, and I apologize for that, but it is very hard not to compare this game to the two when they are so similar. If anything, I think this makes pointing out the differences between them more significant because it gives All Star Brawl more of an identity rather than just saying it's Nicktoons Smash Bros. Gameplay wise, there are some significant combat differences like the aerial strong attacks and weak attacks like I mentioned, and the 3 different attack buttons. The grab also functions differently seeing as there aren't really different variations of throws that get used much. Pressing the shield button also allows the player to parry an incoming attack, which has its uses as well, and you can strafe by holding down a certain button, which keeps your fighter facing the same direction at all times rather than turning around. This, above all else, is the most interesting feature to me, as this prevented me from accidentally facing the wrong direction and using an attack the way that I end up doing in Smash Bros. All the time. So, mad respect to the devs for introducing this ability because it was much appreciated. The cast of characters represented is also really good here. I mean, we've got the expected SpongeBob and Avatar characters, seeing as they're some of Nick's most popular franchises, and of course some loud characters made it in as well. But there are also featured characters like Michelangelo and Leonardo from the Ninja Turtles, as well as April O'Neil, who are all based on their 80s cartoon designs of all variations. You'd expect one of the newer shows like the 2012 version or even Rise, but no, these are the classic designs right here. There's also other 90s Nicktoons characters like Zim, Helga, CatDog, Ren and Stimpy, Ablina from Our Real Monsters, Powdered Toast Man, Reptar? Okay, well actually, Reptar is one of my favorite characters to play as because he's an absolute beast of a damage dealer. I have a lot of respect to this game for not just doing like the standard title characters and nobody else. I'm actually glad that more obscure characters like Ablina and Powdered Toast Man made it in because I'm certain not a lot of kids nowadays even know who they are. There is a shocking lack of Fairly OddParents, Rocko's Modern Life, and Jimmy Neutron representation here though. I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing Carl Weezer or Hugh Neutron make their way into the fray at some point. Just saying. There is DLC in the works for this game from what I've heard, so who knows, maybe it could happen, but as for now, this is the current roster available at the time of this review. The stage diversity in this game is also pretty good. There's one stage for every fighter in the game, which is cool, and a lot of them are iconic locations from the various shows that fans of said shows would easily recognize. A lot of them are very competitive friendly too, with minimal hazards present in most of them, and the music isn't too bad either. I especially love the Zim stages soundtrack for its rockin' piece that really feels perfect for a fighting game if you ask me. The lack of items is a little disappointing, however, as those usually add an interesting mix of randomness into the battle, but at the very least this game has a sports mode, which is a fun side distraction where each player needs to toss a ball into their opponent's goal while also duking it out. It's fun and definitely worth a mention. Ultimately though, when it comes down to it, I think Nickelodeon All Star Brawl is a solid start for a fighting game. It's not particularly remarkable and feels very bare in a lot of areas, but mechanically speaking, I think it flows rather well. There's a solid foundation here that definitely could be built upon. It didn't take me long to adapt to the controls and I had a lot of fun playing what I did in the time that I had. The online battles seemed to run perfectly fine when I could find them, but unfortunately trying to find matches just seems so incredibly rare with this game that I don't know if I'll ever be able to fight 50 online matches to get that platinum trophy. Oh well. Otherwise, I find the game to be a perfectly fun experience that I hope sees further improvements in the future, whether it be the additions of DLC characters or an outright sequel. It's kind of apparent to me that this game didn't have a huge budget given the distinct lack of character dialogue in different game modes, so I would hope that a sequel might be able to resolve some of those issues should the game sell well enough that Nickelodeon decides to order a sequel. The way I see it, Nickelodeon All Star Brawl is still a fun platform fighting game that I can recommend to those looking to have a few fun hours with friends, especially if you're a fan of Nickelodeon, and kids, because I'm sure they'd get a kick out of it. Much respect to Ludosity for pulling this game off, and I hope they're given opportunities to continue expanding and improving their craft in the future. Until next time, Shadowstreak, signing off.
That's gotta hurt.